Welcome to Now, Near, and the Future with Nyla Mir and Quinn Harrington. A podcast that's part crystal ball, part microscope, and part rocket ship.
Welcome to Now, Near, and the Future. I'm Quinn Harrington.
And I'm Nyla Mir. Today's guest has spent his career studying why things either land or don't. Products, platforms, campaigns. The moment when all the work meets the market and you find out what's actually true.
Brett's been inside some of the most important measurement and intelligence companies in the industry. And then quietly, while the rest of us kept attending conferences and writing LinkedIn articles about transformation, he went into stealth mode and built something.
I love this intro. This is terrific.
I love that.
We need a drum beat. Can we get a drum beat, some music, some mysterious music as the plot builds?
There is intro music that goes to it if you've seen any of our other episodes.
Yeah.
All right, continue, Nyla.
That's good. When you talk about building, it's Brett House, and I said it correctly. Founder of High Signals, and now apparently you're also the founder of a new media company called Signal and Noise.
Signalandnoise.ai, yes.
.ai. We're going to hear more about this. So welcome, Brett. How much
Great
sleep
to be
are you?
here.
Yeah, good. So you're busy, huh? Are you getting some sleep or not?
Yeah. That's I do. I saw that question in the prep, and I thought, man, the first thing that came to my head was my it sometimes feels like my head is exploding. Yeah, because you have the launching two businesses is it's everything is kind of split in half.
It's insane.
It's two versions of QuickBooks, two versions of online banking, two business plans, two partnership plans. I mean, it's a lot of work, but I keep telling myself, but you own it, right? And to me, that ownership and it's like there's nobody to blame if it fails, but me and my co-founder for Signal and Noise. So it really drives me, and it's some because I've always thought of myself on the kind of on the product strategy side as a builder, and this is really that's what I'm doing. I'm building things and wearing multiple hats, which is a fascinating, sometimes frustrating and hard. Because I'm not a CFO to start, but you've got to kind of act like a CFO.
Yep.
I'm not a chief product officer to start, but you got to act as a chief product officer, and so it really does broaden your aperture, which I thoroughly enjoy. But you got to be industrious and have a huge amount of energy. And Quinn knows me. We go back a while. The energy sometimes is too much to handle for some people.
I feel the energy.
Off the walls over here.
Let's go back to the origin then.
Now,
we were in the room together when the industry changed. It's a memory that we both share. I want to start where we started, Nielsen. You were a VP when HDco was brought in to help launch the digital marketing platform. For people who weren't there, what was that moment like, and why did it matter? What was the resistance in the room when you were trying to sell precision audience targeting to buyers who'd been running on GRPs and gut feel their whole careers?
Oh gosh, this is an interesting story. So just to give the audience some context, I was part of an acquisition by Nielsen, a company called Exelate.
Yeah, Exelate, that's right.
Yeah, people that listen to signalandnoise.ai, the ad tech, martech space, sort of know this well, but you might have a slightly different audience. But Exelate was a data marketplace. They started basically building almost like a cookie farm for audience segmentation and audience targeting across the programmatic web, right? And programmatic, they kind of were part of that programmatic rise in advertising, real-time bidding. And then they evolved that into a data management platform, which basically added capabilities, segmentation schemas, a whole bunch of stuff. They started building an audience graph or an identity graph by bringing in other devices. Point being is I was part of that sort of early days of sort of programmatic growth, and it got bought by Nielsen, and we became what eventually was the Nielsen Marketing Cloud. But when we first joined, there was a lot of glossing over of eyes when, and I remember I was in one of the marketing teams over there, or meeting with them. People in the room just, when I tried to explain what programmatic media was, what audience building was, where we collect our data, how it's delivered into platforms, ad serving platforms, demand side platforms, to actually deliver ads that you see in your mobile devices, that you see online. And this, again, early days, people just, I remember one of the responses I got from the comms team. They're like, "Is this kind of like leads lists?" And I'm like a spreadsheet of just names and emails. And I'm like, you just did not understand anything that I just said. And what I learned from that experience was really how to simplify how you're talking about it. And that once you get outside of your sort of the ad tech world that I'd come from, it doesn't always translate to people that are in different walks of life, different industries, traditional linear industries, which Nielsen was, largely a linear measurement company for linear television. And so you really have to simplify it and break it down to its kind of basic components versus getting hyper technical. And to me, that's where I've really leaned in from a career perspective, is how do you take that product expertise and translate this in a way that is meaningful to the commercial organizations, and it's also meaningful to the market. And so,
that
was a big
video
learning.
that we created, that 10-minute video, um, that was you and I trying to decipher some of the technical speak into a visual presentation people could understand.
Yeah.
And
What it meant to the end client,
Yeah,
why it was
I mean,
valuable to them in a simple way.
to create videos like that, that are essentially product launch videos, the editor really needs to understand the technology. Maybe not how it's built, but what is the benefit? How is it going to change the way people work? How is it going to change efficiency? Future proofing, things of that nature. So I think it's still one of the best videos that I've created, and I think in large part it was because of the energy and also the budget, thank you, that you gave me to
Well, we did some good ones at
do
NewStar
something
as well.
really
Not the
Yeah.
content.
Well, the NewStar budgets, oh my God, it was like Brett was like, "I don't care, whatever it
Wow.
costs." And I'm like, "Okay, you want 3D original animation?" And he's like, "Yes." And I was like,
Wow.
"Okay."
Yeah.
One
It's part of
video,
that premium positioning when you're sort of a high tech
yeah.
technology company. You can't show yourself.
One
Yeah.
video we
as
did
low
for
tech.
Fabric, which was NewStar's like overarching umbrella brand for all of their technology. One of those videos was 45 seconds, and we spent 160 hours on motion graphics.
160 hours, yeah.
160
and Fabric,
hours.
that kind of stuff is radically technical.
It is.
It is.
And trying to communicate that to the sales org of, they're like, what's a publisher token? What does this mean? Oftentimes, it required us to bring in this case, it was Steve Silver's, a good buddy of mine that was our head of product, to bring him into these conversations that the sales and customer success folks felt, and oftentimes some of the marketing folks, not me, but because I'm a little bit more product oriented, had problems going into depth about. And so when you get question number 2 from client A, and suddenly they're looking down an empty elevator shaft, the elevator's already left, it's on a different floor, right? Facing, having vertigo, they're like, call the product team. That often is the biggest blocker when it comes to commercial product rollouts, right? Is that divide, that knowledge divide.
Yeah. Well, that happens with internal. So I'm all about internal communication and more focused on employee. And I work with IT and I work with finance, and the things that they speak, no one understands. So we have to really break it down to the employee. What does it mean for me? In fact, if it doesn't mean anything or no impact, don't bother communicating. Why are you doing this? But we have to use some of the marketing tactics for it to make it engaging.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my job, but internal, not client facing.
Yeah, well, they're saying now is the time, it's the rise of the English major. I was a comparative literature major, which is slightly different, but similar. But those skills, those liberal arts skills that were so sort of looked down upon. When I went to college, everybody's like, get a computer engineering degree.
Yeah.
Learn how to program. And guess the first job definition that was completely replaced by AI. It was those hard skills, those computer engineering and computer programming skills that you thought would make you sort of invaluable going forward and irreplaceable. Now, that's the first thing that was replaced. You don't need programmers anymore because Claude and other solutions do that so well, right? So the English skills and the communication skills are critical. How do you actually simplify this stuff to allow people to get on board with whatever you're doing?
And we had in our previous podcast, we've talked a lot about how it doesn't, it can do some of the writing, but it doesn't have that human ethics, moral kind of aspect that you need, the behavior part within communications and engagement. So it can't really replace. Yeah, exactly.
Humans need to orchestrate and govern the outputs, right?
Yeah, and that's really where things are going, is more of a managerial curator, head of aesthetics, head of human connection, things like that, where the agentic, agents will be executing, on our vision.
Yep.
So, I've been sounding the warning sign to my alma mater, Flagler College, down in St. Augustine, Florida. And I was in a board meeting for the Visual and Performing Arts group, and we had a little breakout. And I was like, listen, guys, I know the traditional design skills are important because it helps a student learn what's good and to develop their own sense of taste. But from an execution point of view, I don't know if we'll be designing logos in 3 to 4 or 5 years.
3 to 4 to 5 years? I'd say 3 to 4 to 5 months.
No, it's
you don't
it's
have to design logos right now. Like I can go get 150 logo designs and pick one of those in about 38 seconds.
Yeah,
I did it for high signals, right? Point being is that the life cycle, the innovation life cycle, is dramatically compressed to any technology innovation life cycle that we've seen in our lifetimes in human history, right? They're saying that AI innovation life cycles, this is just take this as a sort of directional versus factual, but is approximately 59 human days. So they go through massive innovation overhauls, almost like in what would take a human 365 days to pivot. AI does that pivot in less than 60 days, right? And
so that whole thing about, what was that, the theory that computing power doubles every 18 months?
Yep.
That's much, much shorter now.
Yeah. And eventually we're just going to have it all out in space, powered by the sun.
My God.
That makes sense. That does make sense.
It does. It's like we don't need to completely terraform our world with servers, right? And that's going to change. It's going to change in our lifetime too. And not to get too theoretical, but we talk about this a lot on Signal and Noise.
Well, we will definitely get into that into the future segment.
Yeah.
So Brett, you've worked with some of the most sophisticated data and measurement companies in the world: Nielsen, NewStar, TransUnion, MediaRadar, Exelate. What did you keep seeing that made you think nobody has actually fixed these problems that high signals address?
That's an interesting point. Yeah, there's the solutions that those services deliver, to the end buyers, which typically are brands and or agencies. And there's certainly there's a lot of breakage there in terms of how we manage data, how we manage advertising workflows, et cetera. But with what I saw with a lot of these technical companies, and it's not only technical companies, but especially the B2B SaaS, ad tech and martech, is I saw a lot of breakage when it comes to how these companies effectively bring product solutions to market. And the sort of thesis behind high signals was, that innovation is directly correlated to big innovation events, which are supported by product launches, is directly correlated to company growth and value generation, right? We did an analysis. I stole this from my old CMO at MediaRadar, but we did an analysis of Endicott Capital, which was our private equity owner, of their entire portfolio. And we literally did a X and Y axis around growth, which was aligned to innovation events or product launches. It was product launches versus, which was on the X-axis, and on the Y-axis was growth rate, right? And some companies were over in the top right quadrant, meaning they had a significantly larger number of innovation events or product launches, and had grown in an almost equal way, right up to the right quadrant. Where we were, it was not in the ideal place, but there was a lot of tech debt and data debt that we were going through. But what I realized is that's a pretty important analysis to understand, and I've seen that a lot across these organizations that you mentioned, Exelate to Nielsen, NewStar to TransUnion, is that I saw a lot of breakage with companies being able to bring these innovations to market effectively and in a governed, orchestrated way. Now, there's a whole GTM it's a customer lifecycle, but from the moment you commercialize something, a product launch, for example, that you're bringing to market, from the minute you push it out the door, it has effects on the customer, on the end customer, right? From the first touch point all the way through the delivery of that service by the customer success or account management team. And so that's your sort of GTM life cycle. And, High Signals didn't set out to solve all of those problems because there's organizational issues, there's data governance issues, there's strategic issues. But what we did set out to do is say, get the governance and the strategic plan right in a scientific way at the beginning of the process. And that means understand, across a few dimensions from market narrative and positioning to ideal customer profile and sort of use case applications by persona type to offer it to kind of sort of packaging and pricing. Get all of those things right and do it in a way that isn't going to require an army of product marketers or to hire out an external agency, a brand agency or otherwise, right? And I saw a lot of in the early days of ad tech, a lot of companies would, and I think you mentioned this in the Nyla in the notes, was a lot of companies would put out a press release and a LinkedIn post, and that's what was equivalent to a product launch. And a large percentage, and I share some of this in some of my commercial materials, of launches, I think over 50% of launches fail to meet their goals because they're not really setting in place the correct foundation and governance layer. And you can do that in exponentially faster time than you've ever been able to do in my career or anybody that we know's career, right? And that's with the help of AI, right? And if you can feed AI real-time market information, real-time competitive information, all of your product information from collateral to roadmap to specs, even CRM data, you can start to leverage the power of that predictive intelligence to do scenario plans, to test how is this going to resonate based on the competitive set, based on the market realities with this particular buyer versus this type of buyer. It could be industry category, it could be persona. That type of power is something that oftentimes the product teams, maybe the product marketing teams, would just sort of guess at, say, we think this is going to be the buyer, and then they start to test and learn around product market fit. But what somebody from a woman named Sarah Martinez, who's the chief commercial officer of a company called Tracer, said to me after a communication around High Signal, she said, product marketing has always been a people and a process bottleneck. And I thought that makes a lot of sense. And adding automation to the testing and learning process so that you're going to market with something that's been battle tested against digital simulated focus groups, where it's going to interrogate your assumptions and come back with recommendations that are really powerful.
We just finished up a video with Nielsen IQ. Kenny, the head of marketing for North America, was charged with creating a launch video for their new agentic tool. So what Nielsen did is they created a GPT based on 30 years of household data. And then they created individual agents that could respond to queries. So one of the things we were looking to promote was the beauty products or alcoholic fizzy seltzer drinks. And so you could go in and say, to a particular agent, what do you find desirable in seltzers, and the response was, I like clean packaging. I like unusual flavors. When I, share this at a party, I want my guests to be impressed, and I'm willing to pay a little bit more for something that looks higher end. And then so Nielsen created some fake products based on the Celsius brand, but they just changed the name to something else. I can't remember what it is at the moment. And so they created 7 designs, and they tested those designs against um, uh, their custom GPT.
Yep.
And so now they've opened this up for their clients to be able to do the same thing. And so you're able to get that market research based on Nielsen's, thousands and thousands of, pages of data over the past 30 years. And so I think that what's different and unique about that is that, at the time, that household data was the gold standard of that panel data was the gold standard. And today it's like now they've created an engine around that so that you can query 30 years worth of information and get a real-time response. It's pretty darn cool stuff and sounds a lot like what you've been working on.
Yeah, I mean for a consumer use case, yeah, and
Yes.
the engine behind the Launch Accelerator has a B2C use cases that we don't support, but we support all the B2B use cases. It's exactly it's in a way that you
Yeah,
create,
tell us more about the
it's-
Launch Accelerator, because some of the stats you gave me, like 69% of buyers see inconsistencies across commercial teams, 73% punish irrelevant GTM in real time, half of all launches miss targets. That sounds bad to me.
Yeah, and I think what I sum that all up into is go to market compression, right? And right now you're seeing a lot of people are not only the decision cycles shrinking, and your competitors that are tech forward are starting to shorten their decision cycles. Like, just a perfect example of this is OpenAI responded to Anthropic's, I think it was Claude 4.6. Claude
Mhm.
Code 4.6 with an immediate announcement to market. Within 24 hours of the announcement that came from Claude, and that is real-time predictive intelligence. That's not somebody getting slipped a sales deck that they saw one of the
Yep.
Anthropic people gave to a client, which would the traditional would take months, right? But that type of responsiveness is the speed of tech. And unfortunately, the speed of people isn't quite at the speed of tech, right? And so
Right.
to me, that's what we're kind of solving for. How do you actually compress the strategic decisioning, ensure that you're testing it against, to your point, simulated or synthetic, in a
Yes.
sense, data, right? It could be synthetic focus groups, synthetic buyer profiles. We're prototyping this right now for a couple of clients and for High Signals itself. And the outputs are tremendous in terms of how quickly you can get to basically scientific level quality. So there's a quality component, there's a velocity component, right? And you're really de-risking your product launch event, right? Or your company pivot. You're making a pivot in market, right? And because you know that this is going to have a potential impact on revenue, on your board's perception of you, on the public's perception of you, of clients' perception, right? So I think those 3 things, it's sort of like the quality of the launch that you can go to market without sort of in a very nuanced way, the velocity in which you can turn these things around. And then at the end of the day, that's going to have an impact. It's going to have an impact on both the costs associated with typically doing this, right? Hiring teams, hiring agencies to come in and work for months, consulting firms that spend tens of thousands of dollars to provide a recommendation that's not particularly actionable, right? To me, that's where the competitive set, and you see it with OpenAI and Anthropic, is really going to come in and eat your lunch if you're not really transforming your own business with some of these capabilities.
We're a small business. Like, I'm a small business providing services. And I'm now sitting here listening to you. I'm like, oh my God, what do I need to do next? This virtual CFO seems really good for me because I need one, So I think at the end of this conversation, I might have a plan, hopefully, on how I can bring my products to market or services to market.
You have to sign up for a Claude Pro account and start leveraging some of those agentic team build capabilities, right? That's super powerful. And it's allowing non-technical people to do stuff at a speed and quality that, Sam Altman was quoted as saying, there's going to be a single person $1 billion business
Wow.
in the next 3 to 5 years. And think about that. Like, how is that possible? So I wanted to really, when I thought of high signals, I'm like, I could stay at sort of a traditional monolithic B2B SaaS company that's under a ton of threat from the market, right? And just SaaS companies in general are being threatened because of AI and agentic capabilities and some other things. And I thought, like, there's going to be a tidal wave of companies that need to pivot, right? And they need to pivot fast, and they need to train their organizations on how to effectively speak to these things to deliver value to their end customers. And you just can't do this with a team of 3 product marketers and some demand gen people and et cetera. And I've noticed that there's a lot of breakage. If you don't get the beginning part right, you don't really have a replicatable system. Your launches, your product launches end up being really just campaigns. They're not like a systemic approach that's always learning and always on and always updating, right? Because that type of information is critical. What happens if you have a new emerging category threat that's going to eat into your market share for a relatively successful product launch that you just did? How do you respond to that in real time, in the time of tech? And oftentimes it takes teams 6 months to figure something out, right? Before they get anything to market. And so that's what we're trying to solve for.
Awesome. You want to tell us a little bit about your launch readiness diagnostic?
Sure. So we do we track 8 dimensions across sort of what I think of our core, and this comes from my 25. I'm gonna stop counting eventually. The 25-year experience that I have at go-to-market product launches. Right. I can't go any more than 25. Right. Like, once I get to 30,
I'm at 30.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to say it though. You just say 25. You stop.
Hey, I'm proud of it.
20 on LinkedIn. 20 on LinkedIn. No. So we have a launch readiness diagnostic that we provide to our clients that looks at 8 dimensions. So it's sort of market narrative and positioning, ICP and sort of use case clarity, and it ranks these things on 5, like a 5-dimensional scale: offer package pricing, product readiness and reliability, operating model and governance, field enablement and readiness, launch orchestration and execution plan, and then a measurement and feedback loop. And so we're asking very specific questions that say, hey, how comfortable, how confident are you in these particular areas? And we give a specific example so they know, when I'm talking about market narrative and positioning, this is how it's being defined in the survey. And we do this across functions. So across the product teams, the marketing teams, the sales teams, and the customer success or account management teams, and then some of the executive stakeholders, to gather a kind of an objective view of how ready they really are, right? And we use that lead score, that launch readiness score, to basically figure out the complexity of the product as well as the prioritization of the solution that we're going to deliver. And so we'll dive into certain areas if we realize they're particularly strong in certain areas and not strong in others. And that helps us adjust literally how we price the initial strategic playbook that we deliver to clients. And yeah, so that's kind of the genesis of that, was to really be a kind of an informed, objective, quantitative and qualitative measure. We also go in as consultants, sort of think of us as like productized consultants, to ask questions of the client and to gather some additional inputs. All of this stuff gets fed into our launch accelerator to help it decision and start to scenario plan against how they should, what kind of plays they should run across things.
Kind of reminds me of the old Clout score, but in terms of product launch readiness.
Yeah. Like, what was the Clout score exactly?
Clout was like, what is your what is the influence you have in social media?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's gone away, but that was a fad.
So this is
well, we went a little bit long in this segment. Do you want to go around the room?
Around the room.
You're currently in the middle of a launch as well with your company. You've got high signals, you're piloting with clients, and you just launched a media company. And we're talking about readiness. So how does your own launch score right now? In your
so I'll give people the criteria. So the launch readiness diagnostics scores 5 levels. So it's a 1 to 5, and 1 being not ready, 2 being foundational, 3 developing, 4 ready, and 5 highly ready.
Okay.
And then we measure that across those 8 dimensions
Mm-hmm.
that I talked about. Nobody's going to be perfect across all of them. My aggregate score, I actually ran this for myself because I used my own company as a pilot into our software to see how the scenario planning would roll out suggestions and recommendations for everything I'm doing in market. And I came back with a 2.45.
Oh God.
Which I'm a startup, right? So I came
Yeah.
back with a foundational,
Okay.
borderline developing, and but I had to be honest. I couldn't be
Yeah.
biased in what I was
Right.
ranking, like, because the questions are specific, and it's like, well, be honest with yourself. And as a startup that's launched in December, right? You would understand that I would be at a developing stage right now, and so it does give you sort of an end in sight to say, hey, here are the areas that I need to improve, and I've started to work on some of those, and actually prototyping the launch accelerator. There's already not minor pivots and tweaks and tunes to how I'm bringing this to market.
Mm-hmm.
I just got off with a launch a lead generation service that I'm working with. And they're like, your first message going out in LinkedIn isn't quite hitting, right? And so you look at, well, what is that message saying? Is it not meeting the sort of needs as like a kind of almost an elevator pitch of the people that I'm trying to communicate with? How do I tweak that and make it just super easy to understand before you get into the complex details? And so that's the kind of stuff that you have to continuously pivot and optimize. And that's the process I'm in right
Well,
now.
I look forward to you next time we talk to you. You'll be at a 3.5.
Yeah, let's hope.
All right.
Quinn,
So
what's happening with you? Are
yes.
you launching anything?
Always. Still working on my brand love workshop, which is a 2-hour workshop for small to medium sized businesses to help evaluate what's working, what's not, get insights, and then you'll get a proposal. So that's our lead product now for companies that want to work with Harrington Design. It's replaced the old-fashioned proposal process where you spend a day or two putting a proposal together and you never hear back. So
Yeah.
it's like a $1,500 workshop, and for small to medium-sized business, it's an incredible value. And if they balk at that price, it's like, well, then you definitely are not going to be qualified to work with us because that's just
Yeah.
a drop in the bucket. And so we've had some success with it. Um, we're working on a whole new strategy that's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope it's going to roll out in the next couple weeks.
Nice.
Yeah. Also, I'm going to London.
Yay.
There we
Exactly.
go.
That's what I'm
Yep.
busy planning right now. So if you're doing
Yeah,
around the room.
Nyla's planning the London trip. For people who've watched the podcast before, but maybe it's your first episode, Nyla and I met about 10 years ago in London. I shot her for an interview for Nielsen. We talked for like maybe a half an hour, and then that was it. And then I reached out to her like, I don't know, 10 years later, and she actually responded. I sent her a little clip of her 10 years ago, and she's like, oh my God, I was so young.
I swear. Literally.
Yeah, we became friends and launched this podcast, and now I'm going back to London to visit with her. We're going to record a live podcast there, do a photo shoot, have some good meals.
Little
adventure.
Get her a good curry.
That is the plan. So she's going to come
You
to
gotta
my
get a good
house.
curry.
So why take her to a restaurant when I can bring her home for a good Pakistani meal, right? So that's on
Yeah,
the
nice.
plan.
Yeah, her
Yeah.
mom's going to be cooking, and I'm so excited to get
Yeah.
the recipes that Nyla's been promising me for the
Listen.
last 6
Yeah,
months.
we were there a little while ago. It was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and I brought my 2 boys, one that's 18 and 16. So I think they were 16 and 14 at this point. We did a London Paris trip, and I just remember I've been to London many, many times, but I always recollect 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And how bad the food was. And so I often talk to the English folk about that. And they're like, well, yeah, that's because the English aren't doing the cooking anymore.
Could be. It's,
I hope that's not controversial, but it's because of there's huge immigrant populations that have come in, and the people that are doing, whether they're West Indian or Pakistani or Indian or French, Taiwanese. I went to a terrific
oh my
Taiwanese
God.
gastropub.
Yes.
And like I've had terrific Spanish food. So they're bringing all of this other cuisine that sort of moved you from fish and chips and
I do love my fish and chips.
beef
And boiled
roasts.
potatoes,
Yeah, I mean it used to be like fish and chips and shawarma. That was like the two options.
Oh wow!
Still,
Wow.
shawarma is still there for people who are drinking late. Fish and chips is definitely there if you're going to a pub. Curries is the number one, I think the number one preferred food. So but we've got
I
some
think it's
great
the national food. Didn't curry get ranked like the national food of England, which is just so interesting.
Crazy.
Wow, that's awesome.
So the food scene in London has
It's amazing.
in the last 25 years, it's exploded. It's much more like a New York City. The best food scenes in the world are New York City, London, and Tokyo. I don't even think Paris. I think Paris pales in comparison, and I think it's because of their monofocus on Parisian and French food, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to go. You can't really broaden your aperture too much. You get some Bedouin food. There's still good Vietnamese, but there's just not a lot of. It's like, hey, it's great to have French food over and over. I mean, how many times can you eat foie gras? But the dynamic mix of cultural influences in England and in London and New York is what gets me excited.
Now you're getting Quinn excited.
What about you, Nyla? What are you up to?
Planning your trip. That's what I'm up to.
Okay. All right. Enough said. Let's move to the near section. Oh, let me introduce Brett first.
Yes,
Properly
please.
introduce him. Brett House is the founder of High Signals, a GTM intelligence company built on a simple, radical premise. Most product launches fail not because the product is bad, but because the organization launching it isn't actually ready. His launch readiness diagnostic benchmarks readiness across 8 dimensions before a company commits budget and credibility to a launch event. His launch accelerator uses agentic AI-powered scenario planning and buyer simulation to pressure test narrative, ICP targeting, which is ideal customer profile, competitive plays, and field enablement, and delivers a full launch playbook in as few as 3 weeks. He also just launched Signal and Noise AI, a new media company, making him, at this precise moment, both the expert on launch readiness and a founder mid-launch. That irony is intentional, and it's gold. Before all of this, VP at Nielsen, where Quinn and Brett first crossed paths when HDco helped launch Nielsen's digital marketing platform, one of the pivotal moments in the industry's shift from panel-based guessing to precision audience intelligence. Nielsen, NewStar, MediaRadar, Exelate. I mean, you've worked with so many different companies, and Squark AI. The client list isn't, Brett's name drop. It's a timeline of how media measurement has evolved. He has been building high signals in stealth. This may be one of his first public conversations about it. I mean, it's funny. Brett will disappear for a couple years, and then he'll ping me on LinkedIn. And when I transitioned to Quinn, he even made the extra effort to say, "Did you used to be Jeffrey?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So then he put two and two together.
That was very early on.
Yeah. He put 2 and 2 together, and then, next thing you know, we're working on another thing together. So
yeah, I don't think you updated there's no updates outside of just the name.
Yeah.
Right.
It was a very soft launch. I was just like, it's here. So deal with it.
Didn't have the launch playbook, did ya, Quinn?
Yeah.
No, I made one post
playbook
on Instagram, and it says, "Call me Quinn," and it had my new picture, with the pink and all that, and that was my launch. So
nice.
Near. All right, so should we move to the near section?
Near.
Did we talk about your launch, about the playbook launch that you're planning to launch in 3 weeks? Is that it?
And so Signal and Noise is the media company. and I can tell you a little bit about that. And High
Yes.
Signals and the Launch Accelerator have already effectively launched to market. And so right now I'm in sort of
Yes.
heavy business development partner mode to kind of build that out. I'm also piloting the solution with a couple of clients as well as my own
Yes.
brand, because I've spent a
Yeah.
lot of time building out kind of all of my own core go-to-market things from field enablement, me being the field, although I'm starting to build out a team around that. And so, everything from packaging to pricing strategy to narrative and positioning to competitive plays, who are we competing with, what category are we in? So all of that work has been done. And now I'm sort of tweaking and optimizing that, basically eating my own dog food, using my own tech to really improve. In fact, I went through one document, which was an output from the tech that was 35 pages long. And it was the most succinct 35 pages I've ever read. And it has everything from objection management to persona plays, if I'm talking to a CMO versus a product leader. So that sort of stuff is sort of mid-flight right now. And we're piloting with additional clients. And so I'm starting to have a ton of conversations
I got
to
some advice from one of my longtime colleagues about building this podcast, and he said essentially it's like building the airplane while you're flying it.
Yes.
Right.
I've
And
heard
that
that
sounds a
more
lot
than
like
once.
yeah, it sounds a lot like what you're engaging in. With the rationale that says, you know, it's iterative, launch and then improve.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to have a certain amount of I think discipline around that initial launch. And I
Mhm.
probably am a little obsessive compulsive about it in terms of the amount hundreds of pages of material that I've created of P&Ls and business strategies and competitive analyses and sequences, sales conversations, objection management. And I've done that all over like 2 or 3 months. The power of AI helps you to coach and get through some of this stuff. Now I took all that raw material and fed it into our launch accelerator engine to say, is this on? Where am I missing? Where do I need to optimize? And so I think that's the process of being more scientific, because you could put your finger to the wind around product market fit, around I like to say product founder fit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I really leaned into this area because I've been in the go to market and product strategy and commercialization sort of space for 25 years. So to me, it was a natural extension of that, leveraging some of these incredible capabilities that we've got at our fingertips right now.
Yeah, you talk about you went out. I was at Unilever for 15 years, but still in communications. And I left in 2017, and the words they would use: speed to market, speed to market, speed to market, and how we get there. You need to have a founder's mindset, because why are you waiting 10 months for something? Why don't you launch it and then see what happens? So this is all coming back, and we didn't have what we have now, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's sort of we call it GEMO at
Gimo.
MediaRadar. Good enough, move on.
Yeah.
Right,
But what is good enough has been redefined, right? The
right.
good enough that's coming from people and teams and junior associates and things like that, manually is not good enough in today's world, right? You will be so quickly outpaced. And again, it comes down to how are you coaching, training, setting up agents and AI to be able to basically increase your compute capacity as an individual,
Mm.
right? Like how do you it's a multiplier effect. And one of my buddies in the industry, he's a founder of a company called StealthX, his name is Drew Burdick, was said that it's not just about 10xing yourself. It's about 30, 40, 50, 100xing you, right? And that is a real I'm probably 20 or 30. I mean, he's a little bit further along on that journey, but it really is a compounding effect, and it's incredibly how powerful it was. And so that's when I said to myself, this is an opportunity for me to jump on this bandwagon, to build something and to move quickly. So that's really the impetus behind launching High Signals.
Mm. I know you talk about SaaS, and I seriously don't know. I've heard what SaaS is, but I don't know what that means. And B2B,
Software as a service.
software as a service. And my friend keeps talking about this. So she's a finance person who has now got into AI and all of this, and is building platforms and talking about SaaS. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Should I just invest instead? But I have no idea what these mean. But why did you get into this segment? Like, is it because of your 20-something years experience? Did you see a future? Did you?
Yeah, because I've been in this sort of technology. I mean, I had a startup back in 2000, literally out of an apartment in New York City, in Stuyvesant Sound, New York City, where we were early. And software as a service is just a platform that you're providing to some end user that typically is charged on a seat model. There's sometimes flat rate models. Log in and they can access dashboards and other capabilities for a specific end purpose, right? Think of it as your classic, you log into HubSpot, you log into Salesforce. Those are all traditional SaaS platforms. Those platforms, oftentimes have become larger over time, kind of monolithic in the way that they're structured and sized, super complex. If you've ever used like a CRM like Salesforce, incredibly difficult. It takes sort of power users to be able to manipulate. So you have to have a Salesforce administrator,
Right.
within your organization because of the complexity of the platform that nobody but almost an internal product leader that is specialized in Salesforce can manage. Those days are ending. With agentic workflows, that guy that I mentioned at Celtex, he's like, I don't log into platforms anymore. Everything he's got set up agentically through APIs, which are just direct connections into all of his platforms. And he's literally conversationally communicating with an agent to access data and information that lives in a bunch of different places, right? And so that's the power of where you don't even need your data unified into kind of a data warehouse type of environment. It can live in different platforms as long as your agent has direct connectors into those various platforms. You never have to go into a traditional UI again. You can ask the agent to run analyses, to deliver reports, to build dashboards. Now not everybody in the world's at that speed. I mean, this is a developer that I'm talking about that founded like a development company, but it's becoming that much more that much easier to access for the average person. And one thing that he said that really resonated with me, he goes, the new coding language in the world, it's called English, right? So I said, well, what about Mandarin? I mean, isn't Mandarin? I think they're coding in English. I think they're probably coding in Mandarin.
Yeah.
Human language. That's the new coding.
Yeah, it's a conversational human interface that there's code behind it, and the agent is sort of interpreting what you're saying and then doing the build from a code perspective on behalf of you. And to me, that is just going to democratize product development, and it's also going to change how we do our jobs, right? Yeah, so I think it's just a fascinating space to be involved in.
Nyla, if I could jump in here just real
please.
quick. I know this is your segment.
No.
So getting back to that video that we created for Nielsen about the future of consumerism, there will be, ChatGPT shopping has already launched, but in the near future, we will have agents that act on behalf of us that take care of our everyday, commodities, our groceries, our household needs, shopping. And so doing that in person, like you won't go to the Target app, you'll put in a list of, or actually the agent already knows what you eat, how much food is in your fridge, when you're going to need, replacements, and they'll go out and shop for you, find the best prices, put items from Walmart, Target, Best Buy, all in a cart, and then deliver it to you automatically, either via like a drone or a robot. And so
that's agentic commerce for you.
It is.
We talked about that in a podcast.
It is, and this video, I'll have to send it to you once it's cleared, because I think it's still internal. But we created the whole video with AI, and it's pretty fucking amazing.
Bleep.
I mean, I have to tell you, I was, when we started this project in December, we were fumbling around with V.3, Sora, some of these other wrapper platforms, trying to figure out like how do we create a continuous character. And so the first go around, we really couldn't do it. And then we ended up updating the video a month and a half later, and the technology had already improved to the point where it's like, here's how to create a consistent character. You can have multiple characters that interact, and they'll always wear the same clothes or, have the same hairstyle. They're not going to get all these deviations and such. And so that's one thing that is in our radar in the near future, is that the value of live production is diminishing, almost to the point where the software has gotten so good, like a lot of times I can't tell what's real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm a professional videographer and photographer, and I look at this and I'm like,
What?
You've got a good radar for AI
yeah,
slop.
I mean, it's beyond good enough, move on. It's like,
Yeah.
holy shit, this is a revolution, and looks like you're bringing the same thing, in your space, which is exciting.
Yeah, and it's your decisioning abilities and your
Mhm.
ability to version and test and learn at a speed and leveraging these data sets, right? That are just exponentially beyond what an individual or even a team or an agency could do. It just helps you really make science-based decisions rapidly. And test and learn a bunch of different, the optionality just increases tremendously. And then it comes to, you think of the old world, the old agency world, where they're like, we'll come back to you in 3 months
Mhm.
or 2 months with
Yeah.
3 options, right? And, and the teams have gone off and they've done their workshops and their brainstorming sessions and they've come up with creative options. Imagine if you could take that and multiply that process, that human-led process, by 10,000. And come back in 48 hours. That's the capability that we're seeing. We're able to turn around decisioning. You have to feed it the right information. It has to have the right learning sets. But it's still, once you feed it the right information, you connect it to some real-time data feeds for us. That's the scale that we're talking about, which does increase. It's a velocity play, but it's also a quality play. And I've been blown away by some of the outputs of like, oh, I should be pivoting in that direction, or I should be packaging my product in this way. And I didn't think about it that way because I hadn't analyzed the 500 different options there were, right? Because as a human, I just wasn't capable of doing that, right? Through some Google searches. So
All right, we have time for one more question in near, and then we got to go around the room.
Oh, okay. I was going to go to across the pond, but
Across the pond that's what I meant to say. Sorry.
yeah. Okay, so it's about it's about giving advice to other people. So if a company was launching in 12 weeks and they're doing a major launch and they're listening to this podcast, what's the question they should be asking themselves that they almost certainly haven't asked yet? So they're about to launch
That's
in
the
12
same question
weeks.
I wanted to hear an answer to, so well done.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool.
that they have not. So the question that they have not asked themselves yet.
Yes, and they're about to launch
Right.
in 12 weeks.
Yeah, and it might be the 5-dimensional chess. I mean, you could say a lot of stuff around other stuff, but it's that sort of that 5-dimensional chess of knowing how your competition is going to weaponize their own product launches, either in response to what you're doing or new entrants to the market. And can you have some sort of predictive read of where that's, what's going to happen from a competitive response perspective, as well as a new entrant perspective? Because if they're not they can't be planning in a vacuum, right?
Okay.
And you really do need to be, just like that example that I gave earlier around Anthropic and OpenAI responding within 24 hours, right? Anthropic or OpenAI was ahead of the curve in terms of competitive response, and if they didn't do that, they would potentially lose market share, right? And they would lose share of voice, sort of in the media ecosystem, just for being out there. So I think it's that ability to predict how your competition is going to respond, and then also how do you speak to if they're not thinking yet about how they speak differently in a much more nuanced way across the different buying groups within their clients that they're targeting, right? Whether it's product or RevOps or the CMO, right? Each one of those audiences might be thinking of you and your set of solutions in a different way. They have different psychographics, different use cases and needs, different functional requirements, and they might have a different competitive set in mind when they're considering you versus a competitor. So you really need to know at a very nuanced level, because oftentimes product launches are just spray and pray. People talk about ABM. That's campaign thinking. That's not how
That's
am I
accounts-based management.
yeah, account-based marketing, right?
Marketing,
Which is like
sorry.
I'm going at each account with a very specific message. Great in theory, but oftentimes fails in practice, right? So I'm going at Unilever, but now I'm going at Unilever, and you can start to slice and dice that in a super nuanced way of like I'm going after the marketing team and this specific profile within the marketing team. But the buyer group also includes the procurement team and the RevOps team. And they've got these specific profiles. How do you actually nuance your position, your package, your approach to those specific
I am really
audiences?
interested in this because this is what Nyla and I do. You know, we have our ideal customer profile, and, you know, we look within, you know, a company to see who do we reach them and how do we reach them with the right message. I mean, that's basically how I've managed to stay afloat for 25 years because, you know, like a big company like Nielsen or CoreLogic, which I picked up last year, there's multiple business units
Yeah.
within. And so take, you know, CoreLogic, for example, I was working with the head of mortgage to create a series of videos for them. And then I got introed to the insurance division, which is basically like another giant company that is within CoreLogic, now Cotality. They rebranded. But there's just as much business or more within the insurance business as there is in mortgage.
Yeah. And imagine if you could take your core deck, your core presentation that worked within Team One, and pop that into a learning engine. And this is what we can do with Launch Accelerator, and say, adjust this for specifically the person I'm meeting, not just the function, not just the industry category. It's the same industry category in this case, but you could say we're meeting a CMO that is a male of this age group, this background. You can feed it all of basically the entire profile of that person, and it will adjust some of your messaging within the deck to provide recommendations of, hey, you should probably start with slide, this particular slide.
Nice.
This is going to be a conversation killer. Slide number 2. That type of recommendation stuff is at our fingertips, and you just have to be able to leverage it. So that's some of what I'm trying to lean into, that speed to decision.
I don't know. Maybe Nyla has a friends and family. Maybe Brett has a friends and family discount
for Launch Accelerator.
For us.
Hint.
Dropping hard hints here.
Yeah.
Okay, that was great. Do you want to go across the pond, Nyla?
Across the pond.
I'm based in London, of course, and you're based in America. And I always like to know what's working, what's not working, similarities, differences between the two regions. So when it comes to launch failures, are there any differences between a European market and a North American market? We're not going into Latin American. But do you see any of those, like, failures or similarities in the failures?
There's a localization play, obviously, when you go to specific countries, right? The Brits always would tell me, the presentation needs to be adjusted, right? It's way too salesy, it's way too over the top, kind of Yahoo American, not to mention the American English, right? So there is a nuance. That's a localization play. It's not just a language. Obviously, it's the same language, but it's more of a cultural adaptation of how you're speaking to market. I get the sense that like direct response, sort of like hard selling, doesn't work particularly well in England, because Americans, like, we have this kind of Yahoo cowboy spirit, where we just come invading territories. So our language, our diction, and the way we present, sort of that's some of the feedback that I got, just as a very nuanced way. But I would say
interesting.
Fundamentally, and then when you go to other countries like France or Italy, I've noticed that there's certain differences in terms of sequencing, messaging, diction, obviously translation that comes into some different languages that you have to kind of be aware of. And there's some cultural inputs that I think can help solve against that. It's not just a translation play; it's a cultural translation play, which is different than just a language translation play. So I think that's probably the most. And then I think you just have to look at, hey, what are you releasing in a particular market, and what is the market reality, right? Like, what's the buyer need state? What's the buyer need sophistication? Is it the same type of buying groups that buy this type of product, a software product, for example? Because different countries are different areas on sort of the maturity curve, especially when it comes to high tech solutions. Like the Netherlands is very high on that scale, and England's very high on that scale. But when you get down to Italy, not criticizing Italy, you might be in a different place in terms of who the competitors are in the space and how sophisticated they are. So again, it comes down to that simple fact of how do you adjust your positioning in your language so that those specific audiences understand it.
I told you, Nyla, he's a wealth of knowledge.
I am. I want to ask more questions, but we're running out of time. Like, I was going to go on to more.
We're running out of time.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to save that for another episode and bring Brett back for season 3.
Yes.
Is this a 2-episode series at this point?
Pretty much. All right, let's move into the future.
The future.
All right, Brett, we're at the part of the show where I get to ask the questions I've been saving. You've got the tagline growth engineered. I want to know what that means in 10 years.
In 10 years?
Yeah, this is crystal ball time. I mean, you are like the font of knowledge. I'm sure you've already, have a 10-year plan in place.
Yeah, maybe a 3-year plan, but a 10-year plan is a whole nother. I think in 10 years, we're going to have, I think quantum computing is going to be mainstream.
What?
And quantum computing is you think AI is fast right now with server farms, right? In the sort of all the infrastructure that we're building, around the world. Quantum computing is going to multiply that by more. It's going to really change the face of computing. So that's my prognostication in 10 years. I do think we will have energy and server farms in space. I think it's going to take up a lot less space because quantum computing is going to be able to do incredibly heavy computation with much less hardware, right, versus what we have today. So I think there's going to be you're going to see an even greater acceleration, right? You think the acceleration is, people are talking about the risk to humanity and the future of Earth and all these things. In 10 years, in our lifetimes, we are going to see that even accelerate even further beyond anything we could imagine. So, how does that affect? I just think, again, it's more of that compression, decisioning power. I think the nature of work is going to change a little bit.
Yes.
You're going to see a lot of people having to move up the value chain.
All right, last question for you, and then we'll go into the wrap so Nyla can eat. And this is more of a personal one. What does success look like for you? Not for High Signals, not for the clients, but you personally. What are you actually building towards?
Yeah, I'm building towards a future where I've got sort of independence and control of my own destiny, which I think is one of the reasons why I had that it was the founder calling, which I'm not sure how much of a choice that was. I think I had to move in this direction. And it was an effort to sort of reinvent myself, to get on what I see as a tsunami of change that's happening. It's a new industrial revolution, right? And I want to be at the front of that, riding the surfboard on the tsunami versus being completely smashed by it. So I've typically embraced change. And so to me, to embrace change and to have that sort of flexibility and don't be hardened and calcified in my old ways, I think to me is what it's a personal journey. It's a professional journey. It's a technological journey. And I've always been someone that's been about always on, always learning. It really keeps me in my toes, and it keeps me inspired to keep building what's next versus just sitting and being comfortable in a cubicle at a typical 9 to 5 job. And I think to me, that's what really gives me, as hard as it is. And I heard this quote a long time ago that a startup and a founder, it's kind of like chewing on glass while staring down an empty elevator shaft. There's this constant fear of death. I heard another founder say that it's like being on a pirate ship and walking out with pirates behind you.
God.
You're out on the plank, and you're looking down at a shark-filled, infested waters, right? So there's nowhere to go. You feel like you're under a ton of pressure, and it's fun and exhilarating. And I think it's sort of necessity is the mother of invention. And to me, that's where I really was like, hey, I always found that I come up with my best solutions when I'm under the most pressure. It's like, why is all of this coming? I have a quote, all that is good comes from pain.
Oh, no.
Right, and it comes from, let me just tell the audience what that means is that, it really comes from, like, I'm a cyclist, a road cyclist, so I get on like one of those little crotch rocket road bikes, like the Tour de France bikes, and you do realize that you learn the most when you have a painful experience. You're like, something is wrong, I need to optimize, I need to tweak my form or change my equipment, right? To me, that's kind of what startup's about. It's like you've got to tweak and tune and constantly optimize, and it keeps you keeps me, there's a feling of independence and really being alive that I embrace about it, as hard as it is.
Nice.
I think that's a
Lovely.
wonderful way
Wrap it
to
up.
end this.
Yeah.
And also, Nyla's baby is
Can
going
you hear her?
absolutely berserk in the background. So we're going to have to go to the wrap because this is real life. This is
Do
real
you want
life.
to ask Brett?
We have families.
Yeah.
Tell us where people can find you on the interwebs.
On the interwebs, you can find me at www.highsignals.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I post a ton on LinkedIn at both High Signals as well as Signal and Noise, my media company, which is signalandnoise.ai, also on LinkedIn. Or you can reach me at brett.house@highsignals.com. But
Nice.
you'll certainly see me if you follow me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of others, thought leadership, a lot of executives talking about some of the biggest transformations happening in tech and advertising. So certainly happy
Awesome.
to connect.
Excellent.
Great.
So that wraps this episode of Now, Near, in the Future. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and YouTube. Follow us at Now Near Future on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, or visit nownearfuture.com.
And if this one landed for you, meaning the episode, share it with whoever in your team is responsible for the next launch. Consider it a gift or a warning.
Stay curious and keep dreaming.
See you in the future.